In this edition of Locked On Capitals, your Washington Capitals take down the Ottawa Senators in overtime by a goal by Marcus Johansson. Let's talk about that game next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, and I want to thank you for making this your first listen or view of the day. Yes, this podcast is also available in video form, so head on over to YouTube and check it out. And when you're on YouTube, make sure and hit that subscribe button. And if you like the videos, give it a thumbs up or leave some comments. It really helps grow the channel. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we will talk about your victorious Washington Capitals as they pick up another big win. But Alex Ovechkin still has not scored goal 801. We'll talk about that in the show. Then we will talk about Evgeny Kuzentsov giving John Carlson a new name for his new position that he plays on the power play. And then later in the show, we will talk about the injury scare to Trevor Van Riemsdyk and the updated status of TJ Oshie. But just to get it going here, your Washington Capitals do, in fact, pick up the big win tonight. It required overtime. And to be honest with you, it was a game that went kind of back and forth a little bit. I think the Capitals kind of went into this game thinking, it was going to be an easy win. And as it turned out, that Ottawa Senators team had some pretty good fight to them. And, despite the fact of where they are in the standings, I still do think that the Ottawa Senators are still a fairly decent team. They had Talbot in net, which was a bit interesting considering that Forsberg has been playing pretty well for them. But in any event, that is who they chose to go with. And the Capitals ended up picking up the victory. Again, not handily. It required overtime, but Marcus Johansson really paying off as a great acquisition for the Capitals once again. He was on the team 5 years ago, got bounced around to 5 different teams, and then they picked him up as kind of like, I think a depth move, but he has really proven to be just an outstanding player on this team. And I think that there's just a certain level of chemistry with Marcus Johansson and the other guys that are on the team, most notably like Alex Ovechkin and when Nick Backstrom's in there and just some of these other players that were there from when he played on this team before, and has just really been a bright spot on this Capitals lineup. After winning just 2 of their first 10 road games of the season, the Caps have now reeled off 5 road wins in a row after Thursday's 3-2 overtime victory over the Ottawa Senators at Canadian Tire Center. So what is the identity of this team? That is a good question. For the longest time, it seemed like this team was a bit snake bitten in. It just seems like they were having a hard time finding their way. And there was a lot of excuses surrounding this team, but now they are kind of just unifying and moving in a good direction. The things that kind of hung them up in the beginning of the season, like playing from behind, for example, that kind of made them kind of close in and say, I don't want to do this anymore. They're finding a way to bust out of that and find a way to pick up a big win. And I know it's not against a real big opponent here. I know the Ottawa Senators aren't that great of a team, but it still shows that resiliency, that tenacity to be able to pick up a big win. The game started off out there. Kuznetsov got a goal, just another really sweet goal. So to see him getting that production out there was just a bright spot out there. And same goes for Sonny Milano. Wow, what a great acquisition Sonny Milano has been. Again, he was picked up from a PTO, released by the Calgary Flames, and just has been a plug-and-play player, a real good nose for the puck, and has just been nothing but a great addition since the day he joined this team. So A plus marks goes out to Brian McClellan for picking up Sonny Milano. I know he had that illness and he was out for a couple games, but that's not his fault. He has been playing excellent on this team when he's been in the lineup. And just, again, a real pleasant surprise considering the myriad of injuries that are out there. So just a really great moment out there. It was also an interesting night for Darcy Kemper, who had not played in some time. A bit of an interesting move. Some people thought that Charlie would get the start tonight and Darcy would get the start Friday night against the Jets, but that is not what the case is. And, a bit of an interesting move. Like I talked about, it was kind of my belief that the net should have been, Charlie Lindgren's. He's the one that has kind of taken the Capitals to where they're at right now. And to kind of just turn it over for the fact just that, Darcy Kemper is healthy again, I don't know if that's, the most fair thing to do to Charlie Lindgren considering how well he has played. Kemper made 11 of his 23 saves in the third period, with 7 of them coming on the Ottawa power play. One of his best late stops came on Holden's weak side shot from the inside of the left circle midway through the third. Just taking a look at him, he did have a good game, all things considered. But, like I say, I think that the net should have ultimately been Charlie's because he has played that well. But, the big thing for me in this game, again, was the team pulling together and to make it to overtime, and not just make it to overtime, but find a way to win the game. That is the big thing for me because they were coming from behind to start out the game. So for the Capitals to find a way to bind together and pick up the big win means, that the team is trending in the right direction here. And that's what we hope for going forward here, that the Capitals can continue to keep going in the right direction. So coming up next, they are taking on the Winnipeg Jets. And that is going to be a tough team. This is not the Winnipeg Jets that we've remembered from before. This is a team that's firing on all cylinders, and they're playing a lot better than they have in previous years. So the Capitals are going to have their work cut out for them. It is a game that is probably going to see Charlie Lindgren inserted back into the game because it's a back-to-back, but it's going to be an interesting game, suffices to say, and it's going to be a good litmus test for this team. Can they continue to string together wins? That is the sign of a good team, is to be able to string together consistent wins one after the other. So let's hope that the Capitals, in fact, do have that in the tank. All right, so after the break here, we are going to talk about John Carlson, and he has taken on a bit of a new role on the Washington Capitals power play, being that TJ Oshie is out of the lineup. We'll talk about that next. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many as the evening comes to an end and people start to head out. You think of calling a ride? Nah, you live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds you'll get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst thing that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill someone. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after you drink a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Thank you for making Locked On Capitals your first listen today. Make your second one Locked On Sports today. The biggest stories around the sports world in 20 minutes or less, plus instant reactions, game recaps, and Locked On's take of the day. Locked On Sports today, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you find your podcasts. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, where it's your team every day. In this episode, we are talking about your victorious Washington Capitals as they take down the Ottawa Senators. Just a really great win, a great team win, I'm going to say. It was an Ottawa Senators team that did not get a lot of shots on net overall, but the Caps pick up the win. The Caps were able to apply the pressure, and that is why they are the beneficiaries and why they ended up winning the game tonight. And again, a really great win. My hope for them is they can continue to string together some wins. But just to get going in this next segment here, we are going to talk about kind of a silly thing, I guess you could say, is that with TJ Oshie out of the lineup, John Carlson has taken on a different role on the power play. Post-game, Kuznetsov referred to Carlson as Johnny Diamond and praised his move to Oshie's bumper spot on the man advantage, which went 1-for-4 in a big 3-2 overtime win over the Senators. Writes Washington Hockey now. And if you know one thing about Evgeny Kuzentsov, he is a bit of a silly guy out there, but that's okay. I think that he's good for the locker room. I think that he has a funny sense of humor. I kind of like his sense of humor, and I think it kind of adds a different look to the team. It's not all serious, and we're tough guys out there, and we're playing hockey. Evgeny Kuznetsov is, kind of a funny guy out there, and, giving him that nickname kind of sticks with him. Definitely, we improve our game in terms of the power play. The Johnny Diamond over there gives us a different look, Kuznetsov told reporters after the victory. It's pretty amazing to see how right-handed players make such a difference in that position. All I wanted to see him was to score from there because it's rare to see the D play in the diamond. It's a pretty special thing to see. And what they're referring to is, if you're not familiar with it, is John Carlson was playing in that bumper spot where you're kind of just right in front of the net and then they shoot it to you and you just bump it in, just like the name sounds. Typically not the role that John Carlson plays, but it's a position that he's playing out of necessity. I guess primarily you could say because, like I said, TJ Oshie is out of the lineup. So if he's out of the lineup, ergo, you have to have someone come in and fill that role on the power play. And, they didn't get the production that they were looking for. I don't know if they're going to try to give it a different look in the next game, but I think that, you got to do what you got to do. I mean, you take a look at the game, and I'll talk about this a little bit later. Trevor Van Riemsdyk got hit, and he was out briefly. There is a lot of players that are coming and going from this team. You got to be a bit of a Swiss Army knife and play different positions. And John Carlson has played in the league for quite some time, so I don't think it's too big of a deal. Kuznetsov added that having John Carlson out there gave the Capitals a different look. Don't listen to Kuze. He laughed. I don't coin anything. He probably coined it himself. And again, just, kind of showing the lighthearted nature of John Carlson and the lighthearted nature of Evgeny Kuznetsov out there. Just, a situation based on necessity, like I said, that John Carlson had to move in and play that bumper position on the power play. Again, I think that everything went, as well as it could go. I just think, they didn't get that scoring that they were looking for ultimately. But I think that, if the position and the shot was, on target and, the opportunity presented itself, I think that John Carlson could have just knocked it right in. It just didn't really happen that way. But in any event, I think the Capitals, it's something that they're going to have to keep working on. It's going to depend on how long TJ Oshie is out of the lineup, right? He's normally that guy that kind of takes on that role. I suppose they could try to slot someone else in different that they think that might be able to get some better production in that position. But, just based on a small sample size, I think that, everything kind of went according to script. But the one thing that, you don't ever want to underestimate is the pushback from your other team. And again, with the Ottawa Senators tonight, at certain points, I think the Caps maybe underestimated the firepower that they had, and they didn't make the most of the power plays when they were available anyway. All right, so after the break here, we will talk about the injuries facing the Capitals. Alexeyev, TJ Oshie's status has changed. What do we know? We'll talk about that next. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, where it's your team every day. In this episode, we are talking about your victorious Washington Capitals as they take down the Ottawa Senators in overtime. by Marcus Johansson. Some late game heroics there, just a really great shot. And the Capitals end up picking up the big win. Defenseman Alexeyev has been activated from the injured reserve and appears to be cleared for action. So Alexeyev, as we know, is what I'm going to say a depth defenseman on the team right now, a healthy scratch. You could put into that same breath there Joe Snively. But he is, available for the Capitals if they need him. And Lord knows, with the injuries that are on this team, Alexeyev's opportunity might come sooner than later. And, it kind of came a little bit short anyway. If you remember the game that he got injured, that's how he got pulled out of the game. Otherwise, he might still be playing. I know that Dmitry Orlov has come back and all that. We do know that Marcus Johansson has been sent back down to Hershey. So I guess it remains to be seen what happens with Alexeyev. Does he have a spot on this team? I guess remains to be seen. The other big player of note is TJ Oshie, who we have talked about in this podcast over the last couple days here in his status. On the TJ Oshie front, the 35-year-old is out against the Senators and will not play against the Winnipeg Jets at home. He has not played since going down with what the team is calling an upper body injury in the second period of Saturday against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Oshie was back checking and was pulled out of the game visibly with discomfort. Head coach Peter Laviolette didn't remain committed to the day-to-day status and said Oshie will be reevaluated after the holiday break. The break is that extended time, and then when he comes back, we'll assess and see where he's at, Laviolette said. Instead of leaving it day-to-day, it'll be close to a week. I'm guessing by the time we're back, and then we'll see where it's at. And I guess, that remains to be seen as what the extent of his injury is. They're saying upper body injury, as we know he had that core procedure that was done in the off season. I guess core procedure is a bit vague, but in any event, he has missed a substantial amount of time. And, you're seeing kind of the impact of Oshie in the lineup when he's not in there. You're starting to see defensemen kind of take on forward roles. I.e. John Carlson and that kind of thing on the power play. So having TJ Oshie in the lineup is ultimately what is best for the Washington Capitals because, like I've talked about, he has a positive energy, and the statistics and the analytics prove that the Caps play that much better when he's in the lineup. So we do hope that he does come back sooner than later, because his impact is noticeable on this team. Now, the Washington Capitals are slated to take on the Winnipeg Jets, and it's going to be a tough game for them to play, just based on the fact that the Winnipeg Jets have been surging as of late. But this is going to be one of those true litmus tests. A good measuring stick for this Capitals team is to see what they have in the tank. Can they string together back-to-back wins? The Ottawa Senators weren't that great, but the Winnipeg Jets are a great team. Can they find a way to win? Then you're kind of starting to draw into focus what the identity is of this team. It's not conjecture anymore. You're starting to kind of put this team through its paces, if you will. And I think if the Capitals can walk away from the game that they play against the Winnipeg Jets and they can pick up a win, I think the team is really kind of out of the woods and trending in the right direction. I'm not going to say that they're Stanley Cup favorites or anything like that, but what I am saying is that they're trending in the right direction. They're, kind of able to string together wins, and not just wins, against so-so teams. They're able to pick up wins against some of the tougher teams. And the Winnipeg Jets, as funny as it is to say, they're one of those teams now. If you take a look at their record, they're playing in the top, and that's going to be a tough task for them. As we know, they have Hellebuck in the net, and so it's going to be, he's that big imposing frame in the net. It's going to be difficult to score goals as it is for everyone around him because of his large stature. So it's going to take a lot of the Capitals sharpshooters, i.e. Alex Ovechkin. By the way, what a great opportunity for him to get number 801. That's what we're really hoping for. I want him to get that off his back, that pressure of I need to get 801. As we saw in the game tonight, he was a little bit pass happy. He had some, quite a few assists in this game. So he is getting the helpers in there, but we want him to get 801 and then ultimately 802 to just get past this so we don't need to talk about this anymore. But in any event, it's going to be a tough thing for Alex Ovechkin. It's going to be a tough thing for the Capitals in general to get shots past Hellebuyck because he is such a big, imposing frame in the net. But it is going to be a good game, and I will have you covered on Locked On Capitals. I know we typically don't do shows on the weekend, but if Alex can find a way to get 801 or 802 or something like that, I'll definitely have a show for you as long as nothing major is going on. I've got kids, and you know how it is. If you have kids at home, they get sick, all that kind of stuff. It's really kind of hard to plan things. So say something like that doesn't happen in my life. I will have a show for you on the weekend. It is going to be a monumental occasion. Make no mistake about it. Alex Ovechkin tying Gordie Howe. This is a generational thing. This isn't something that happens all the time. So you want to capture this moment and kind of soak it all in because, you might not ever see this. If you're listening or watching to this right now, there's a good chance you'll never see anything else like that in your lifetime. I'm assuming there's no, 1 or 2 year old kids watching this right now. So if you're old enough to watch a program or listen to a podcast like this, you're probably never going to see or hear anything like this again. So really just kind of soak it in and understand the gravity of the situation. You take a look at Wayne Gretzky. When was the last time he played? And take a look at Gordie Howe. It has been quite some time. So again, just really soak it in and take it for what it is. It is going to be most likely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity if you're a hockey fan for one or a Capitals fan for two. So it is going to be a special occasion. And, again, I just, above and beyond everything else, I just want him to get past this marker. Thank you for making Locked On Capitals your first listen today. Now make Locked On Sports Today your second listen. Peter Bukowski brings you the biggest stories from around the sports world in 20 minutes. Get the analysis and opinions before anyone else with local and national experts and insiders. Locked On Sports Today, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you find your podcasts. So once again, thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, where it's your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.